So the other question was, can these sort of things be instilled without telling lies? And I explained to you, no. We must tell beautiful lies. Beautiful lies are a part of life. It would be wonderful if this was not the truth, but you know, it's just true. This is true. Lies are needed, and it's better if they're beautiful. It makes the harm that they do create less pain within us. Belief is not real. Sorry, belief. Okay. So nervous with this thing. It's so strange. A lump of plastic, rare earths, and glass can make me feel strange. So, justice is not real, and if it is, I ask you to blanket me in it. You know, can you clothe me in liberty, please? I referenced the late writer Terry Pratchett. He liked to say it, hand me an ounce of justice. These are beliefs that we create, subjective claims about the universe. To me, the Bible is intended to force you to create subjective claims in order to make truths as opposed to facts. And this is where Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson had their little squabble. I think Peterson trolled him really good the first time. It was kind of cute to watch him squirm. But this is where we find our truth, is by making subjective claims and measuring them. This is in the art of Plato and his Republic, and the supposed Socrates. I know he existed in a way that I'm pretty sure Jesus existed, and we now know King Arthur existed. But what happened after them is the most interesting thing. One of the Greek writers, I cannot think, the Peloponnesian War, I think is the name of his book, references that by his time, which is not much later, the myth that, oh my goodness, puppies on the move. They reference the myth that Helena of Troy was the face that launched 1,000 ships. Even though there's a military, or I can't remember exactly what he was. He may have been a military man that's going, you know, like, I don't think there was more than 100. You know, he was there, and he, you know, myths get built in interesting ways. So back to, ow, I'm being bitten. I'm being bitten. This is, ow, ow, I can't work this way. I need a union. So yes. The Bible allows for the argument. Arguments allow for ingenuity. The most important thing that I have found from almost every religious text or speech or whatever that I've taken in is that you need to look at the world in particular ways. You don't need your cup to run over all the time, that's for sure. It's best to have a cup that's half full and you're looking at it as if it's half full, not half empty. The world, the universe, humans in general are hard, cold, loving, and beautiful. I have a tail giving us a little bit of an eruption there. That's one of the most important truths that we can realize about life. That's why I think that Sam Adams, wasn't it said? Douglas Adams in Hitchhiker's Guide, on the front of his Bible, it says, "Don't panic." This is, you know, basically the claim of most religions, because when you feel like you don't know things, you want to panic. It's like when you feel like you're oppressed, you'll make oppressed decisions. I was once living in the middle of Oakland in Occupy, homeless and, yeah, oppressed, and now I'm not. I should know. Sorry, I don't know if you know that. Anyway, so, like, there's a lot of things one can do with the Bible. Come here. There's a lot of things one can do with any sort of anything. One of my favorite things to do for friends is get this little guy here to do tricks for treats. And before I give him the treat, I ask him who loves the state, and then tell him to give me kisses. is, we're all whores, for one is Shria and another. That's another truth you kind of learn from the Bible. I think that the Christian and Jewish religions in particular are they work so well because cultural appropriation is woven into them. The Christians have no problems with making something like prayer moves, which was, I can't remember that was the name, it's the Christian version of yoga. That way they can make sure and not offend God. Now, I think that's beautiful and silly in different ways, right? But, it really came to me whenever Hank Hill takes yoga and he thinks the whole damn thing's silly until it fixes his back, and then he's in there at work teaching the guys how to fertilize the lawn. They're going to appropriate anything they can, and they're going to take it and they're going to say it in their ways, which is another reason why Christianity, it is one of the most widespread ways that you can have a moral conversation. You can always reference back to anything. We can have this conversation, as a matter of fact, hey, Daddy's recording, buddy. We can have the conversation about Colin Kaepernick and his situation. You compare it to James, I forget his name, the guy who got fired from Google. I kind of feel the same about both of those. That's where a lot of my stuff on the internet's been going, that, they're really in the same boat. They were fired. Do I necessarily agree with why they were fired? But, if you do that on your company's memo or, during your company's standing of the national anthem, that's what your employer requires of you to work there, you can be fired. So, you can go and reference that, but if you're talking to someone who takes the scriptures of Christianity as seriously as, say, I do as an atheist, you can also argue moral philosophy the way that you guys are arguing theist versus atheist philosophy. I'm a rare atheist. I'm not like most. Well, for one, I teach the Bible because I feel it's important. I'm a bit like Nietzsche. I realize that I've come up to God from behind and I've stabbed him in the back and I've ripped him up the side. And now I'm trying to clean up the mess because I realize what I've done. God can be taken as real and God doesn't have to be taken as real. And it really doesn't matter when you're looking at it because it's just a good set of things to measure the world with. It's almost like a tool set. Like we talked about deductive reasoning and how it was a precursor for science. Well, so was this. Where do you think the Protestants got the morals to take science that far, to be able to question their own Bible and yet still believe in it? You got to have a lot of faith to do something like that. You got to have a lot of moral character, moral fiber. You can get that from bouncing back and forth between the verses. I often like to reference Job and Samson. Samson went out and got himself into trouble over and over and over, and he needed God to perform miracles to get him out. I believe this is a precursor of communism in a lot of ways. The need of the state, the miracle to help those who make mistakes. And I don't say necessarily communism with disdain, just the idea of helping others, being a community in its essence. And then you've got Job. Now, Job, a hard-working motherfucker, God happened to him. God didn't have to help him. God happened to him. And Job never lost faith. Peterson kind of references this whenever he's talking about, what happens when you get to the end of the world and you don't know what you're looking at. They needed belief systems that would instill. Building onto that is like it's best to have big dragons. You've seen small lizards, you've seen medium-sized lizards. Go ahead and tell them there's big fucking dragons out there. And if there's not, oh well, they would have been ready for it. And then, of course, another reason why Christianity is prayer. Prayer is one of the most powerful things that I've discovered. It took, again, Peterson and Harris to make me realize that I had been praying most of my life as an atheist. Stop and look back at what prayer is. You probably think of it as just people muttering to themselves. And you're absolutely right, in my opinion. But you've overlooked its potential, and you probably don't realize you're doing it too, just like you do realize you're meditating. Prayer is feeding the subconscious. The conscious feeding the subconscious with thought over and over and over. And Harris really put it to me. I'd known it for years and hadn't put it all together. That on the talks of free will, that you have this voice that interrupts you with thoughts. You're trying to listen to me now, and it's interrupting you. The voice that interrupts you with thoughts that are smarter than you are inside. Those brilliant outbursts of thought that you just hope for. That's the effect of prayer. You feed the subconscious with thoughts until it produces thoughts, until it produces something original, something you couldn't think of. You do it in lesser ways, where like you have something that's in your way, an obstacle in life, and you could go and tackle it, but you don't want to. And you sit back and you feed your subconscious until all of a sudden, boom, there's an answer that flies into your head. And 3 weeks after you should have, you could probably, or 3 months, or however long it takes, you can probably go and tackle that thing with all kinds of new ideas you didn't have before. This is one of the powers of prayer. The other one is stepping back and not just gobbling your food like my little pit bull does. Yeah, sure, you get fed, but how much do you enjoy it? And really, I think there's something important in the kosher way of life, because, and don't let other people prepare your food. Take control of your life. Take control of every bit of your life, The kosher way of eating is letting other people prepare your food these days, but it's preparing food to a certain standard, a certain governmental regulation, so to speak. Knowing what is in your meal is important to you, and you know it is. So when you eat things that you don't know where it came from, you wind up getting phone calls from people you don't know in the middle of recording. I promise you. I must hurry. So, Christianity really, in my opinion, offers a lot. Back to prayer, yes. So there's the prayer for creating thoughts, feeding the subconscious. And then there's the prayer for altering how your food tastes. Just every time before you eat, you stop and you take a moment and be thankful for where it came from, who brought it to you. If I'm eating tomatoes from Walmart, I stop and try to remember that we, import I think it's 50% of our produce from Mexico and other Latin countries. I stop and try to think of them, the situations they're in and things like that. I also try to remember that when preparing the food, and I wash my tomatoes well. Anyway, take time to appreciate where it came from, especially when you're cooking. It's a lot easier to do. When you get online and you find a meal that you really love and you learn to take hold of it and make it yourself. My wife is a fanatic for cooking. I thought I was until I taught her how to cook, and now she's kicking my ass. We've got homemade yogurt in there. I never realized it was so easy. Homemade yogurt. Oh my God. Oh my God. You like burritos or Mexican foods? Homemade refried beans are the best. Take control. Don't just clean your room. Clean your food source so that it's not a source of worry. I know that you had shown in your videos going to fast food restaurants. I don't know how common that is with you, but when I do it, I always worry about what I'm eating a lot more often. And it causes trouble and strife and worry up here, which is more mental power that is put towards other things. Do you have any idea how many Bible verses have tried to tell you this? I know a bunch of them. I don't believe in God, but one doesn't need to believe in God for it to be useful. I take that back. I believe in God because it's useful. I guess it's maybe the Aquinas argument. It's better to pretend that there is a being who cares, who's watching my every move. I will act better that way. It doesn't have to be God. A lot of times in my life, it's my wife. If I'm not there, I pretend my wife is there. She's part of my God. Oh my goodness. I try to pretend these guys are not here, but you know, they won't ever let me. The idea that you're going to be judged is good. I've often argued, and even though I'm a marijuana and mushrooms, I guess you would say, on the fence kind of person, I don't do them anymore myself, but I don't necessarily think they should be so illegal. But at the same time, I worry that if we have lots of people with heads full of, especially the hallucinogens, what society would look like, what it would function like. You know, I almost wonder if it's not better to keep that sort of stuff contained inside the house. I even remember thinking back on one of my last trips that it's rather useful that I'm afraid to leave the house, because it instills in me the sort of fears that Solzhenitsyn, I think is how they pronounce his name, kind of tried to paint on himself when he asked, what did I do to get myself into this? Have those times that aren't so great where you find yourself trapped in the bathroom and not being able to leave. Creating a prison for oneself is a very useful technique. So much like the God itself that may not be necessarily just or good or bad, the law itself, which is about the same, may have good effects on the human. I don't know. I'm facing jail time soon, so back to don't panic. Where it plays into all of that, what you're eating, how you're living your life, what have you. And that doesn't mean don't panic, because we all panic. That's the assumption that all these books make, is that we're going to panic, that we're going to come to the end of our wits, that we're going to lose faith. You know, they try to teach us, whether it be, you know, well, you name the religion, on how to stay strong like, well, Job. I like Job a lot. He's powered me through all kinds of stuff. It doesn't matter whether you need to enslave people, because they've lost faith in everything. They've come to the end of their rope. I mean, Buddha, I think I got into this earlier, if civilization was to fall apart, I could see some sort of bleak future for it. But you guys just wouldn't budge, you wouldn't work. I might enslave you for the future of humanity. Definitely. For no other reason than that. But for the future of humanity, I might instill a slavery system to try to keep it going. I may force breeding. It's sad. But these are some of the fundamentals of keeping humanity alive, just like any other species. The best and the worst are in that book. Almost every single imaginable action a human can take can be debated using Scripture. It's evolutionary. It's plug and play. What do you need? And once you have the Scripture memorized, you can have quick conversations. Because where one person may sit down and explain their whole mental thing, you know, like I'd gone into the guy who got fired from Google and the football player Kaepernick, they got fired. I can go into this huge thing trying to explain both situations, or I can just run to the Bible and try to quote verses. Now, to some that seems silly, but within the right people, we can have the right conversation. There's a verse that Orwell quotes. Psalms, I believe it's 24. Orwell quotes this at the front of Homage to Cantillina, I think it is. You guys are so patient. And yeah, I cannot remember the exact verse. I'll try to maybe tag it in this. But actually, hold on.